At the Hope Center shelter in Oakland, a room full of homeless people was in complete silence, many with tears in their eyes after hearing the words of a 6-year-old child. Canon Curry had just said something so pure and touching that it changed the hearts of everyone present. To understand how we arrived at this transformative moment, we need to go back 3 days earlier, when it all began with a tantrum over a PlayStation that would change a family's life forever. You can perceive that some of life's most important lessons begin in the simplest and most unexpected moments. And that's exactly what happened on that Thursday morning in the Curry family kitchen, during a breakfast that seemed ordinary but would become the starting point for a transformative journey. Canon was sitting at the table, lazily stirring his cereal, when he suddenly exploded in a complaint that made Steph stop everything he was doing. "Dad, I need a new PlayStation 5. Mine is already too old, and all my have one newer than mine." Steph looked at his 6-year-old son, seeing there a genuine expression of frustration over something that most children in the world wouldn't even dream of having. Canon had a PlayStation that had been released only 8 months before, a collection of more than 50 games, and a toy room that looked like a Disney store. "Canon," said Steph patiently, "your PlayStation works perfectly. Why do you need a new one?" "Because Tyler's at school. Loads. Games faster than mine," replied Canon, as if this were the most grave injustice in the universe. "And Mason's has a different color that I don't have. It's not fair." Naturally, this leads us to a deep reflection on how we raise our children in a world of abundance. Steph observed his son throwing a tantrum over something that cost more than many families earn in a month, and felt a pang of concern in his chest. Isha, who was preparing Canon's lunch for school, exchanged a meaningful look with Steph. They had talked about this before. How to teach gratitude to a child who had never gone without, who had never had to wait for anything, who grew up believing that everything was always available. "Canon," said Isha softly, "do you remember the last time your PlayStation broke and you went without it for 2 days?" "Yes, it was horrible. I had nothing to do," exclaimed Canon, dramatic as only 6-year-olds can be. "And what did you do those 2 days?" asked Steph, sitting in the chair, next to his son. Canon thought for a moment. "I played with my cars, Drew, helped Mommy make cookies. We played basketball in the backyard." How is it possible that a child doesn't perceive the contradiction in his own words? Steph smiled internally, realizing that Canon had just listed a series of enjoyable activities he had done without the PlayStation, but still insisted he had nothing to do without it. During the drive to school, Canon continued his campaign for the new PlayStation. "Dad, you make a lot of money playing basketball, right? So why can't you buy me a new PlayStation? It's just money." The words hit Steph like a punch to the stomach. It's just money. A 6-year-old child was reducing work, effort, years of dedication to something trivial. Even more concerning, she was developing a mentality where everything could be solved simply by buying new things. Have you ever wondered at what moment a child loses the ability to appreciate what they have? Steph began to realize that, unintentionally, he and Isha had created a little consumption monster. A child who measured happiness in acquisitions and who saw money as something infinite and worthless. That afternoon, when he returned from practice, Steph found Canon in the toy room, surrounded by hundreds of expensive toys, complaining that he was bored and that he had nothing cool to play with. The contrast was surreal. A child surrounded by more entertainment than most children in the world would ever see, declaring that he had nothing. "Canon," said Steph, sitting on the floor next to his son. "Come here. Dad wants to talk to you about something important." "If it's about the PlayStation, I still want it," said Canon immediately, as if he had rehearsed the response. Steph took a deep breath, realizing that the moment had come to make a decision that would change not only Canon's perspective, but possibly the entire family dynamic. He looked around the room, seeing scattered toys, games never opened, gifts that Canon had received and forgotten within days. "Canon, Dad is going to make you a proposal," said Steph, his voice carrying a seriousness that made the boy stop playing with the toys and pay attention. "On Saturday, we're going to take a special trip. Just me and you. I want to show you something very important." Canon's eyes immediately lit up. In his mind, special trip with Dad meant one thing: more gifts, more fun, maybe even the new PlayStation he wanted so much. "Are we going to the toy store?" asked Canon excitedly. "No," replied Steph. "We're going to a place much more special than that. A place that will teach you something that no gift can teach." What's most impressive is how children can detect when something important is happening, even without completely understanding what it is. Canon perceived that there was something different in his father's tone of voice, something that went far beyond normal outings or gifts. "What kind of place, Dad?" Steffi looked deeply into his son's eyes, seeing there all the innocence and potential for growth that still existed. "A place where you'll meet very special people, people who will teach you about things that really matter in life." Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity, and Canon was definitely curious. He had no idea that this special trip would take him to a world completely different from his own, a world where PlayStation didn't exist, where children played with cardboard, where entire families slept in simple beds side by side. "Can I bring my iPad for the car?" asked Canon, already planning how to entertain himself during the trip. "No," said Steph firmly. "This time, we're just going to talk. Me and you. And you'll see why this will be the most important trip of your life." That night, during dinner, Canon was visibly excited about the prospect of the mysterious trip. He told Riley and Ryan about the plans, creating elaborate theories about where they might be going: a secret amusement park, a giant toy store, maybe meeting some famous player. Isha watched Steph, realizing that he had made an important decision. They had talked several times about how to teach humility and gratitude to the children, but they always postponed it. Always thought they were too young to understand deeper concepts. "Are you sure he's ready for this?" whispered Isha to Steph when the children went to brush their teeth. "He needs to be," replied Steph, "because if we don't do this now, we might lose the opportunity to teach him what really matters in life. Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity." And the next morning, Canon woke up even more excited about the mysterious trip that would change his perspective on everything. Steph knew he was about to take his son to a world that would challenge everything Canon thought about wealth, happiness, and what it really means to have enough. And although he didn't know exactly how Canon would react, Steph was certain of one thing: they wouldn't return home as the same people who left. What Canon didn't expect was that this special trip would be to the Hope Center, a homeless shelter where Steph had been volunteering silently for years, away from the media spotlight. It was a place where basketball titles didn't matter, where the only thing that really counted was the basic humanity of reaching out to those who needed it most. On Saturday morning, Canon woke up more excited than Steph had seen him in weeks. He had chosen his favorite outfit, a Warriors shirt just like his dad's, and sneakers that cost more than many people earned in a week. In his mind, this special trip would certainly be photographed, maybe posted on social media, and he wanted to look perfect. Dad, can we go now? Asked Canon for the 10th time in half an hour, jumping from one foot to the other in the kitchen while Steph finished his coffee. We're going, champ, replied Steph, observing his son's pure anxiety. But first, I want you to understand something important. Where we're going today, people might look different from you, might live differently, but they are people exactly like us, okay? Canon nodded distractedly, his mind clearly focused on the expectation of what was to come. In his imagination, maybe they were going to meet other famous players, or visit some incredible place that only special people could access. You can perceive that some of life's greatest lessons happen when our expectations brutally clash with reality. And Canon was about to experience this in a way that would change his perspective forever. During the car ride, Canon began to notice that they were heading to a part of Oakland he had never seen before. The houses were smaller, simpler, some with peeling paint and less cared-for gardens. It wasn't dangerous, but it was clearly different from the millionaire neighborhood where the Curry family lived. "Dad, where exactly are we going?" asked Canon, a hint of anxiety beginning to replace the initial excitement. "We're going to visit some friends of mine," replied Steph. "Very special people you need to meet." "Do they play basketball too?" Steph smiled sadly. "No, Canon. They do something much more important than playing basketball. They teach us about courage, about strength, about what it really means to be human." The answer confused Canon even more. In his 6-year-old mind, nothing could be more important than basketball. After all, basketball was what made his dad famous, rich, admired by millions of people. When Steph parked in front of the Hope Center, Canon looked out the window and saw a simple 2-story building with a discreet sign at the entrance. It didn't look like anything special, nothing that justified all the expectation he had built up. "Is this it?" asked Canon, clearly disappointed. "This is it," confirmed Steph, turning off the engine. "Canon, I want you to keep your mind and heart open, okay? Some of the most incredible people I've ever met live here." Naturally, this leads us to a fundamental truth about judgments. Canon was about to learn that our first impression about places and people can be completely wrong, and that true wealth often hides where we least expect it. When they entered the shelter's lobby, Canon was immediately confused. There were people sitting in simple chairs, some reading, others talking quietly. Women with small children, men of various ages, all wearing clean but clearly used clothes. The smell was of laundry soap and strong coffee. Jennifer Walsh, the shelter coordinator for 15 years, greeted Steph with a warm hug. "Steph, good to see you. And this must be Canon you talk about so much?" "Hi, Canon," said Jennifer, crouching down to his eye level. "Your father has told me a lot about you. He said you're a very special boy." Canon waved shyly, still processing the environment around him. Everything was very different from what he was used to. The chairs were old, but clean. The walls had posters with coexistence rules and meal schedules, and there was a board with photos of smiling people, residents who had managed to re-establish themselves and leave the shelter. "Canon, can I introduce you to some friends?" asked Steph, taking his son's hand. "What's most impressive is how children can feel energies and emotions even when they don't completely understand the context." Canon could perceive that there was something different about that place, something he couldn't name, but that made him feel a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Steph took Canon to a common area where some people were watching television. It was there that they met Marcus Williams, a 45-year-old war veteran who had lost everything after struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder and mental health problems resulting from it. Marcus, I want to introduce you to my son, Canon, said Steph. Canon, this is my friend Marcus. He was a soldier and fought for our country. Marcus smiled warmly, extending his hand to Canon. Nice to meet you, champ. Your dad talks about you a lot. Said you're good at basketball just like him. Canon shook Marcus's hand, noticing that it was rough and had some scars. Hi, Mr. Marcus. Were you really a soldier? I was. I served in Afghanistan for 2 years, replied Marcus, with evident pride in his voice. It was an honor to serve my country. Why are you here? Asked Canon, with the brutal honesty that only children possess. Sober question could have been embarrassing, but Marcus just laughed. Sometimes, son, life gives us challenges that are bigger than us. After I came back from the war, I had some health problems that prevented me from working. I lost my apartment, then I lost my car, and ended up needing help. Canon listened attentively, trying to process how someone who had served the country could end up needing help. In his mind, heroes always had happy endings, like in the movies. But you know what? Continued Marcus, taking a wrinkled photo from his wallet. I have this here, which is worth more than any house or car. It was a faded photo of a girl approximately 8 years old, smiling and hugging Marcus. The photo was clearly deteriorated by time and constant handling. This is my daughter, Emma, said Marcus, his voice slightly choking. She lives with her mother in another state. I haven't seen her for 3 years, but I talk to her every week on the phone. Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity. And at that moment, Canon was discovering that families could be separated, that fathers could love children even while being distant, and that some people carried their most precious treasures in an old wallet. Why can't you visit her? Asked Canon, his innocence making the question sound even more touching. Because I'm still trying to get reorganized, champ. But one day I'll manage to save money to visit her. And when that happens, it'll be the happiest day of my life. Canon looked again at the photo, seeing how Marcus held it carefully, as if it were made of crystal. She's pretty. She seems nice. She's the smartest and funniest girl in the world, said Marcus, his face lighting up. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. She always loved animals. Steph observed the interaction between his son and Marcus, seeing how Canon was being naturally attracted to the man's genuine humanity, regardless of his housing situation. This was exactly what he hoped would happen. Canon, said Steph softly, Marcus told me you like video games. I do, replied Canon excitedly. I have a PlayStation and tons of games. That's cool, said Marcus genuinely. I loved video games when I was younger. Zelda was my favorite. Never finished it, but spent hours trying. Do you want to see my games? I have more than 50, offered Canon, as if Marcus could go to his house at that moment. The innocent offer made Marcus smile with a mixture of joy and melancholy. That would be incredible, champ. Maybe someday. It's impossible not to feel that some conversations plant seeds that will bloom in unexpected ways. Canon was meeting someone who had lost almost everything, but who still maintained love, hope, and dreams. And more importantly, he was seeing that happiness didn't depend on PlayStation or expensive sneakers. Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity. And when Canon looked again at the faded photo of Emma in Marcus's hands, something began to move in his heart. A seed of understanding about what really mattered in life was being planted, and it would soon bloom in a way that would change everything. It was when Canon asked an innocent question that broke everyone's heart and revealed the purity of a child facing human suffering. A question that had no easy answer, but that touched a universal truth about injustice, hope, and the human capacity to find light even in the deepest darkness. When it was time for the Ichai's community lunch, Steph and Canon headed to the simple but welcoming cafeteria of the Hope Center. The tables were white plastic, the chairs mismatched but functional, and the aroma of homemade stew filled the air. Canon observed the people organizing themselves in orderly lines, talking quietly, some helping others carry trays. "This looks like school," commented Canon, noticing the similarity to the school cafeteria, but without being able to completely understand why adults were eating lunch. "This way." "It is similar," agreed Steph, "but here it's different. Here it's a temporary family that takes care of each other." You can perceive that there are moments in life when we are confronted with realities that our mind still can't completely process. Canon was at that exact point, observing a world that challenged everything he understood about how life worked. It was when Steph introduced Canon to Sarah Mitchell, a 38-year-old woman who was sitting at a corner table with her two small children, Emma, 4 years old, and Lucas, 7. Sarah had gentle but tired eyes and smiled warmly when Steph approached with Canon. "Sarah, I want to introduce you to my son, Canon," said Steph. "Canon, this is my friend Sarah, and these are her children, Emma and Lucas." Canon waved shyly, but was immediately intrigued to see children close to his age in that environment. Emma was playing with a paper doll she had made herself, while Lucas was drawing on recycled paper with small, worn crayons. "Hi, Canon," said Emma cheerfully. "Want to see my doll? I made it yesterday." Emma's simplicity and joy left Canon confused. How could a child be so happy playing with a paper doll when he himself got bored with hundreds of expensive toys? "It's really cool," said Canon honestly, examining the simple doll. "How did you make it?" "My mom taught me. We make lots of toys with paper and cardboard. It's super fun," replied Emma, as if she had discovered the greatest treasure in the world. Sarah watched the interaction with a melancholic smile. "Canon, want to sit with us for lunch?" During the meal, Canon listened attentively while Sarah told her story. She had worked as a nurse in a local hospital for 12 years, had her own small but comfortable house, and was building a stable life for herself and the children after a difficult divorce. "So what happened?" asked Canon, with a child's natural curiosity. Sarah took a deep breath, clearly still processing her own journey. "The pandemic changed a lot of things, Canon. The hospital where I worked had to lay off several employees because there wasn't enough money. I was among the people laid off. But didn't you get another job?" "I tried very hard," explained Sarah patiently. "But there were many nurses looking for work at the same time. It took months to get interviews, and when I did, the salaries were very low. I couldn't pay the rent for our house." Naturally, this leads us to a devastating truth about how life can change quickly. Canon was hearing about concepts that his 6-year-old mind struggled to comprehend: unemployment, eviction, housing insecurity. Things that existed in the world, but that had never touched his protected reality. "And then you came to live here?" asked Canon, looking around the cafeteria. "First we went to live with my sister for a few months," continued Sarah, "but her house was small, and she also had financial difficulties. It wasn't fair to burden her family. So we discovered the Hope Center, and they welcomed us." Canon observed Emma and Lucas, who continued playing and talking normally, as if this were a completely normal situation. They didn't seem sad or traumatized, just adapted. It's impossible not to feel that some of the greatest lessons about resilience come from observing how other people deal with adversity. Canon was seeing children who had lost their home, but who could still smile, play, and find joy in simple things. Aunt Sarah said, Canon, naturally using the respectful treatment his parents had taught him, "Can I ask a question?" "Of course, dear." And then Canon asked the question that changed everything in the room. A question that came from his absolute innocence, but that cut straight to the heart of the human condition, of undeserved suffering, and of the incomprehensibility of certain injustices of life. Why did God let this happen to you if you're so nice? The silence that followed was profound. Not only Sarah, but several people at nearby tables stopped eating and looked at Canon. The question had touched a universal issue that everyone there carried. Why did good people go through such difficult situations? Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of a complex emotion, a mixture of pain for the innocence of the question and gratitude for someone recognizing her goodness in the midst of her difficult situation. What's most impressive is how an innocent question can validate someone's humanity in a way that adult words rarely can. Canon wasn't offering pity or condescension. He was genuinely confused about how injustice could happen to good people. "You know, Canon," said Sarah, discreetly wiping her eyes, "sometimes I ask myself the same thing. I don't have a complete answer for that." Canon waited patiently, perceiving that she had more to say. "But what I learned is that, even when bad things happen, good people always appear to help. Like your father, who comes here regularly to talk with us. Like Jennifer, who takes care of all of us. Like other families here who became our friends." Canon processed the answer for a few moments, his 6-year-old mind working to understand complex concepts about adversity and community. And then he said something that nobody expected, something that made the entire table stop breathing. "Aunt Sarah, can you be my friend? My dad always says that friends help friends." The words came out with the absolute sincerity that only children possess. There was no condescension. There was no pity. Just a genuine offer of friendship from a child who had recognized goodness in another person. Sarah began to cry openly, but this time they were definitely tears of joy. "Of course I can be your friend, Canon. It would be an honor." Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity. And at that moment, Canon's innocent curiosity had created a bridge between two completely different worlds. The conversation had caught the attention of other people in the cafeteria. Tyler Brooks, a 19-year-old young man who was at the shelter with his mother after being evicted, approached the table. "Sorry to bother," said Tyler shyly, "but I couldn't help but overhear the conversation. Canon, it's been months since anyone treated me like a normal person. Everyone looks at us here as if we were invisible or dangerous. But you're talking to us as if we were people." Tyler's observation hit Steph deeply. He realized that his son, without any training or preparation, was doing something that many adults struggled to do. He was seeing the people at the shelter simply as people, not as statistics or social problems. "You are people," said Canon, confused by Tyler's comment. "Why would anyone think differently?" The innocent question made Tyler smile for the first time in weeks. "You're right, man. We are people. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us of that." It's impossible not to feel that some of the greatest transformations happen when we simply treat other human beings with the basic dignity that everyone deserves. Canon wasn't doing anything extraordinary. He was just being a genuine and open child. Other people began to approach the table, attracted by the positive energy that Canon had created. Benjamin Lewis, a 50-year-old man who had been looking for a job for 6 months. Amanda Foster, a single mother with 3 children. Andrew Davis, a veteran who had lost his house after health problems. Everyone wanted to talk to the child who saw them simply as interesting people, not as charity cases. Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity, and Canon was about to discover that true wealth wasn't measured in PlayStation or expensive sneakers, but in the ability to connect human hearts through the simplest and most genuine kindness. At the end of the visit, when it was time to leave, Canon did something that left everyone in tears and forever changed the way Steph saw his children's education. It was a moment that proved that sometimes the greatest lessons about humanity come through the pure wisdom of a child who hasn't yet learned to complicate the simple things of life. Steph was talking with Jennifer Walsh about ways to increase donations to the shelter when he noticed a different movement in the cafeteria. Canon had stood up on one of the chairs and was gesturing to get everyone's attention. Several people stopped their conversations and looked at the 6-year-old boy who clearly had something important to say. "Everyone, can I say something?" said Canon with his child's voice, but with a seriousness that made everyone completely stop what they were doing. Steph approached, curious and slightly worried about what his son might be about to do. The cafeteria became completely silent. All attention focused on the child who had spent the last few hours talking with each person there as if they were old friends. You can perceive that there are moments in life when even small children carry a wisdom that adults take decades to develop. And Canon was about to demonstrate exactly that. "I came here today complaining because I wanted a new PlayStation," began Canon, his voice echoing through the silent cafeteria. "I was angry with my dad because he didn't want to buy it, and I thought my life was unfair because my PlayStation was too old." Sarah, Tyler, Marcus, and all the other people who had talked with Canon during the day were completely attentive, realizing that something special was happening. "But now I understood something very important," continued Canon, looking around the room and making eye contact with several people. "You are the richest people I've ever met." A murmur of surprise went through the room. Nobody was expecting this declaration from a 6-year-old child about people who literally didn't have their own home. What's most impressive is how innocence can cut straight through all adult complexities and reach the core of truth. Canon wasn't being condescending or repeating something he had heard. He was sharing a genuine revelation that had sprouted from his own heart. "Why are we rich?" asked Emma, Sarah's daughter, with her 4-year-old curiosity. Canon smiled at her. "Because you help each other. You share food, take care of one another, are real friends. At my house, I get angry when the Wi-Fi doesn't work right. But you are happy just being together." The words hit each person present differently, but equally powerfully. Marcus discreetly wiped away a tear, remembering how he had found more emotional support in that shelter than in many places he had lived before. Steph was completely shocked, not only by his son's words, but by the depth of understanding that a 6-year-old child had developed in a few hours about concepts that many adults never manage to grasp. "You know what else?" continued Canon, his voice gaining more confidence as he spoke. "You made me realize that I was being very silly. I have so many things at home that I don't even use. I have toys that I picked up once and forgot, games I never played, clothes I don't even like anymore. It's impossible not to feel that some truths about gratitude and abundance can only be understood when we see our life through other people's eyes." Canon had spent 6 years accumulating things without questioning, but a few hours at the shelter had completely transformed his perspective. Tyler, who had mentioned how people treated them as invisible, was visibly emotional. A 6-year-old child was validating the humanity of everyone there in a way that society rarely did. And then, Canon did something that nobody was expecting. He looked directly at Tyler and said, "Tyler, you told me you like video games, but never had a PlayStation, right?" Tyler nodded, curious about where Canon was going with this. "I want to give you my PlayStation, and all my games, too." The silence that followed was absolute. Nobody moved, nobody breathed audibly. Tyler looked at Canon as if he hadn't understood correctly. "What do you mean?" he managed to whisper. "I want you to keep my PlayStation," repeated Canon, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Because you'll use it much more than I do. I just kept complaining that I wanted a new one, but actually, I didn't even play much with the one I had." Naturally, this leads us to a powerful truth about genuine generosity. Canon wasn't offering something he didn't want. He was offering something valuable, because he had understood that the joy of sharing was greater than the satisfaction of possessing. Tears began to flow down Tyler's face. In 19 years of life, many of them difficult, he had never received such a generous and unexpected gift. But more than the gift itself, what touched him deeply was the way Canon saw him, not as someone worthy of pity, but as a friend who deserved something special. "Canon, you don't need to do this," said Tyler, his voice choked. "I know I don't need to," replied Canon. "I want to, because friends do this for each other, right?" Canon's simple answer echoed through the room like a lesson about unconditional love. Several people began to cry openly, not from sadness, but from a complex emotion that mixed gratitude, admiration, and renewed hope in humanity. Sarah picked up her daughter Emma, whispering in her ear, "See, love? That's how special people act. They think of others before thinking of themselves." Marcus approached Canon and knelt down to get to his eye level. "Canon, son, you just taught me something I had forgotten. Thank you for reminding me that pure goodness still exists in the world. Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity, but sometimes they end with actions that prove we really learned what matters." "Dad," said Canon, looking at Steph, "can I do more things like this? Can I bring more toys to share with my friends here?" Steph was struggling to contain his own tears. The son who had left home complaining about a new PlayStation was spontaneously offering his most valuable toys to children he had just met. "Of course you can, champ," Steph managed to say. "Actually, I think we can do this together. Regularly." Steph's promise triggered an even greater emotional reaction in the room. The idea that this wouldn't be a one-time visit, but the beginning of a lasting friendship, brought hope in a way that money donations never could. Jennifer Walsh, who had managed the shelter for 15 years and had seen thousands of volunteers pass through there, approached Canon with tears in her eyes. "Canon," she said, "in all my years working here, I've never seen someone understand so quickly what really matters. You have a very special heart. Have you ever wondered how some people, regardless of age, manage to touch the essence of humanity in a way that transforms everyone around them?" Canon had done exactly that, not through elaborate words or grandiose gestures, but through the pure simplicity of seeing other people as worthy of love and friendship. "Everyone," said Canon, climbing back on the chair to address everyone in the cafeteria. "Can I say one more thing?" Everyone nodded, completely captivated by the boy who had transformed an educational visit into a transformative experience for all. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to be really rich. It's not having many things, it's having people who care about each other. And you showed me that love is the only thing that becomes more when we share it." Canon's final words created a sacred silence in the room. Not only because they were profound, coming from a 6-year-old child, but because they had been lived, not just spoken. It's impossible not to feel that some of life's greatest transformations happen when we stop measuring wealth by what we accumulate and start measuring it by what we share. When Steph and Canon finally left the Hope Center that afternoon, they were no longer the same people who had arrived. Steph had discovered that his son possessed a natural capacity for empathy that no school or book could teach. And Canon had discovered that true joy came not from getting new things, but from making other people happy. On the way home, Canon was quiet, clearly processing everything that had happened. "Canon," said Steph, "you know you made me very proud today?" "Why, Dad?" "Because you showed that you understand something that many adults never learn. You understood that we are happier when we make others happy." Canon smiled. "Dad, can I go back to visit my friends next week?" "Of course you can, son. Actually, how about we make this our tradition? Every week, just the two of us?" "That would be incredible." "And Dad?" "Yes?" "When we get home, can I separate more toys to take to them?" Steph smiled, realizing that Canon's transformation hadn't been temporary. It was real, lasting, and had fundamentally changed the way his son saw the world. Great lessons in life often begin with curiosity. And that day, a 6-year-old child's curiosity had planted seeds of compassion that would bloom for the rest of his life, touching countless other lives along the way. Because sometimes, the most powerful words in the world come from the mouth of a child who hasn't yet learned that love has limits. And when that happens, everyone around is reminded that true wealth always was, and always will be, the ability to love and be loved.